Fred here. In this installment of TPP Dynamite, I'm going to be discussing my own opinion regarding how to write a solid Captain America story that will actually sell. Spoiler alert, it is not complicated, and it's honestly so simple that I really do think Disney Marvel should consider firing its current Captain America writers and hiring me on in their stead to do the job that they either can't or have refused to do over the past several years. First things first though, if you haven't already, let me encourage you to subscribe to my channel. I'm currently at just over 580 subscribers and am really trying to reach 1,000 as soon as possible. I post film, book, and TV series reviews. I do opinion pieces on entertainment, news, and affairs. I am also an author of adult and young adult mystery novels. I recently released a new short mystery called The Intruder. There's a link to it in my video description below, and I encourage you to check it out as well. With that in mind, and without further ado, I'm going to just jump right into it. So this little video is a little late, but also sort of right on time. I was first inspired to make it around the time that Captain America Brave New World came out, but only decided within the past few days to pull the trigger and actually do it when I heard a very valid argument by another popular YouTuber whom I like, who's a military veteran and who has sworn off reading some of the newer runs of Captain America comics, specifically because he does not like the way that much of the newer stuff tends to insult both the United States of America and the armed forces as part of its thinly veiled woke leftist preaching style. And of course, being familiar with some of the more recent Captain America stuff, I know this other YouTuber's argument to be absolutely true. And of course, I'm aware of the flagging sales of some of the more recent Captain America comic books and the flat failure of Captain America Brave New World, which was already written initially as a leftist anti-Orange Man sermon with a few action scenes, but which was eventually rewritten and reshot 3 or more times so that it could be perceived more neutrally following the November 2024 United States election and what the results of that election indicated about the leanings of more than half the country. And being aware of all that, as well as being a Captain America fan who himself has been pretty disheartened by the turns that the character has taken both in the books and in cinema over the past several years, I decided to make this educational video on how to write a proper Captain America story, one that will not only make a profit but also be good, beloved, and culturally relevant for the benefit of the clearly clueless writers who've been pumping out that disheartening and underperforming content over the past several years. And like I said at the top of this video, it is not complicated. It is very simple, a simple and succinct 3-part mantra that should really guide the processes of any writer who sets out to tell any kind of Captain America story, and this is it. First, Captain America is Steve Rogers, and Steve Rogers is Captain America. Second, Captain America, whether in comics or on screen, is at his narrative best when he's written as an ideal soldier and an ideal American in a less than ideal military and a less than ideal America. Third, Captain America is at his narrative worst when he's used as a tool by leftist writers to preach to the audience or deconstruct America, whatever that even means. Alright, the first point is basically as straightforward as it sounds. Basically, Steve and Steve alone is Captain America. Not Bucky, not Falcon, not John Walker, or anyone else. I've discussed this many times in past videos, and I won't dissect the point again here, but just to give you the Cliff's Notes version, audiences and fans have never taken well to the notion of anyone besides Steve Rogers in comics or film or television who has acted in any long-term capacity under the so-called mantle of Captain America, even when Steve Rogers approves it in story. Ergo, a good, beloved, and culturally relevant Captain America story is by definition generally going to be one wherein Steve Rogers alone acts as Captain America. You've got some exceptions like limited narratives, contained what-if tales, and one-shot stories in which other characters have decent or genuinely interesting runs under the Captain America title, like some of the comic books that featured Bucky's acting in the role, but the general rule remains. Second point, Captain America will always be at his best in story when he's portrayed as a perfect soldier and a perfect American in an imperfect army and an imperfect America. People aspire and always have aspired to be greater than they are, and that's why they're always drawn to buying and investing in stories about heroes who are greater than them but represent what they could be. That guy who never compromises, always makes the right decision, never gives up the fight either physically or psychologically, even and especially when he lives in a world where truth and righteousness are considered a viewpoint, and where those who don't get with that program are punished more often than rewarded. That guy whose morality always somehow seems to put him ahead in the final analysis, despite that it should not. Captain America was conceived as the American version of that character and has had his best results with fans and audiences when he's portrayed as that character. A superhuman who can definitely deliver on the action and spectacle that is the bread and butter of comic books or movies, but also a soldier of perfect conscience who's completely unafraid to speak up against and act against a plan by the United States military to sacrifice or abandon its wounded or captured troops without losing faith in that military itself. A patriot who can criticize America as a country for enabling an elitist dictator's rise to power without losing faith in the American systems or people themselves. An idealistic pragmatist who understands and fights for that perfect balance between freedom and security. And those aspects of his character are, when displayed, what land him in the type of philosophically sobering, politically thrilling, and action-packed stories that audiences and fans just can't stop consuming. Put simply, Captain America at his best is a perfect soldier and patriot whose unshakable faith in the ideal America consistently leads him into jaw-dropping adventures of martial and socio-political relevance. That's the Captain America who sells best when you look back over the character's entire comic book, film, and television history. And that blends perfectly into that third point that I mentioned earlier, that Captain America is at his narrative worst when he's used as a tool by leftist writers to preach their own politics to the audience, or to quote-unquote deconstruct America. Yeah, this is something that I think that many, if not most, of the more recent Captain America writers just do not get. Captain America just does not work when used as a symbol for the woke leftist DEI alphabet feminazi mob, or as a mouthpiece by which writers of prejudice can demonize America itself as the most racist nation in history, or the American police and military as institutions of shame versus pride, or women and minorities as the universe's most valuable treasures. Now, like I just said, Captain America is able to see the chinks in the armor of the brand. He gets that America is not and never was perfect. In fact, one of his most popular comic book arcs, one that in hindsight is actually quite relevant in this day and age, has him briefly stop being Captain America and become Nomad after losing his faith in America after learning that a terrorist had ascended to the heights of American political power. But that whole arc ended quite quickly with his becoming Captain America again and having the epiphany that he still can fight for and believe in the American ideal while understanding that the American government is and always has been a flawed creation by flawed people. And that's the whole point. Captain America challenges the American government or the American president or the American police or the American military or even American adjacent agencies like SHIELD or the United Nations. But Captain America does not deconstruct or rethink or demonize America. He embodies it and its people and at their best. He does not praise murdering terror organizations while telling off elected officials who are trying to maintain world order. He does not hail Hydra. He does not act as a partisan flag bearer for the radicalized political left. That's the Captain America who fails, critically, commercially, narratively, etc. So yeah, those are the elements of a good and successful Captain America story in either comic books or films or television, really. Steve Rogers is Captain America. Captain America is an ideal soldier and American against the backdrop of a less than ideal military in America. And though he's written to confront the flaws in America's systems, he is not written to deconstruct or disrespect or radically liberalize America. Class dismissed. You're welcome, Disney Marvel, for the crash course, not to mention the wake-up call, even though you probably won't hear it. Anyway, that's just my opinion, though I do think that the facts, most specifically the sales, back me all the way up. Nevertheless, now I want to know what you think. Sound off in the comments below to let me know if you agree with me, if you disagree, if your feelings are more complex. Meanwhile, if you like this video and made it this far, don't forget to leave a like, click subscribe, ring that bell, and hey, follow me on social media as well. So long.